Go. Everybody, welcome to another Live Off the Mat. I am really excited about this one. We have Rebecca Cohen on the call today, who is truly a stand-up paddleboarding expert. Just to give you a brief introduction about Rebecca, she's been a yoga teacher for 10 years. She's jam-packed a lot into those 10 years. She's in the RYT 500. She's a certified international of yoga therapist, so CIYT, registered yoga school 200 and the 300-hour advanced training, certified stand-up paddleboarding yoga teacher. And beyond all that, I think what really impresses me most about Rebecca is that her husband is in the military. And so since she became a yoga teacher, she's moved to Pensacola, Florida, Jacksonville, Florida, San Diego, California, Monterey, California, Batavia, New York, which is like upstate New York, and then Okinawa, Japan. So Rebecca, thank you so much for being on the call. Really appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I love to just jump in with these things, and it's always interesting to get a sense of people's background, of where they came from and what led them to becoming a teacher. So let's start there. What got you into yoga, and then what, made you want to progress to become a teacher?
It's a cool story. I was a springboard diver in college, and I fractured my lower back in 3 different places, 2 different occasions, from diving. And I was actually in college. That was like my only purpose. I had no idea what I wanted to study. But it was devastating, and I was in pain, like serious pain. And this was back in the late 90s, and yoga was not cool yet. It wasn't.
You were a diver?
Yeah, collegiate diver.
Hey, Rebecca, real quick, can you come a little bit closer to because it's just the audio is a little bit better if you come closer.
Is that better?
Perfect. Okay. So you were a diver.
I was. I was a diver and an adrenaline junkie too.
Okay.
You kind of have to be both of those things to be a diver. Anyway, the back pain was so terrible that I could barely study anymore. I really fell off the deep end. No pun intended either.
Sure.
I really was in a downward spiral, a combination of painkillers and lots of alcohol.
Oh, wow.
Actually, yeah.
Wow.
I was just not, life was not good at that point.
Yeah.
And nobody could fix me. I felt like I was 80 something years old. Like I would throw my back out sometimes twice in a week. Like I'd go to the chiropractor and it would get fixed, and then I'd go home and it was out again. It was seriously, I had frequent flyer miles at the chiropractor. It was ridiculous. And I remember times where I couldn't even drive myself to the chiropractor. I had to have a friend take me. And I was 20 years old. It was,
jeez.
Yeah, it was terrible. And then a friend of mine, we were out drinking because that's what I did all the time. It's the only way to get rid of the pain. And she was like, you should try yoga. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. What do people do? What does it mean?
Yeah.
So I didn't even know. Anyway, long and short of it, I went and took one class, and it was so weird and uncomfortable. I actually wrote a little blog post about it on my website. It's hysterical because I wouldn't take my socks off. It was really embarrassed of my feet. It was so funny. It was I was that awkward yoga student that shows up your class and won't take their socks off. That was me, which I think is hysterical because I see them now, they come in, they won't take their socks off. And I'm like, yeah. Anyway, after that one class, I woke up the next day and my back was it was not terrible. It was
right.
Usually it was I couldn't really get myself out of bed. I had my bed low on the floor, and I would roll over, and I'd come up on all fours. And then I'd make myself sit up, and I would sit there for a couple minutes and catch my breath. I was like hobbling around. It was terrible. But after one yoga class, it didn't do that. It was weird. Like it hurt, but it wasn't like, you know. So I started doing VHS videos with Rodney Nee because he was for athletes.
Because that was almost the only choice at that point in time.
Well, it was either him or some fruitcake, that was like not my style,
Yes.
I needed a personality that would resonate with me.
Yes. No, listen,
And
let's be
he's very
real.
general.
Let's be real.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it because there is some frou-frou-ness within yoga, and it's
totally.
It's time
Especially
that we just kind
then.
of bring what's real about life. Let's be honest. Let's just call it like it is. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. I wasn't gonna do some like weird old lady yoga or anything. I was, so I started doing those videos like 3 times a week, and I was like a totally different person. But I was a closet yogi because yoga wasn't cool. It was like 1998. It was like maybe 97, a long time ago. So anyway, after graduate school, I was very academic. Like I was a big achiever in college, and so I had a lot of stress, self-induced stress that I enjoyed because there was that adrenaline junkie. Like I really enjoyed the deadlines and all this stuff. And that carried through. I went on to like a fellowship program, which is a very prestigious program in the federal government. And the job I was given was very stressful. And so I would go to yoga first thing in the morning. And then sometimes if my day was stressful, I'd go again in the evening. So my yoga practice really got ramped up due to the stress levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, I just kind of became, almost addicted to yoga. It was like in a good way. It really balanced out my emotions. It gave me a lot of clarity in business meetings that were very stressful.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just something I did to keep myself centered and to keep my edge, actually. Was my thing. I was like, yeah, this is like my secret stealthy awesomeness,
You're a yoga ninja. I love it.
Totally was. And, so my job was always stressful, but when I got married, I always had January off because I was in congressional affairs. Congress is in recess from January to February. Anyway, I went to teacher training because I just wanted to go to India, and a friend of mine was going, and she needed company. I had no intent on being a teacher or quitting my high-paying job.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that didn't actually happen. When you go to yoga teacher training in India, like you get hit over the head with, a spiritual stick.
Oh, I can't even imagine. I still haven't been to India, and there's parts of me that feels like a little inauthentic as a teacher since I haven't been to India. But well, the thing is that I think we often put India on a pedestal in regards to yoga. From my teacher, Nataraja Kallio, he had spent 7 years studying there and living there, and I was like, why did you come back to the US? Like, that's the epitome of yoga. And he was like, yoga, it can be lived anywhere.
True.
This mysticism about India, yes, it's an amazing place. It's where yoga started, but you don't need to be there in order to live yoga and to spread yoga. So
as long as you have a good, authentic teacher, I agree with that.
Yeah, I'm jealous. That's amazing. Like just to even have that experience of doing it within India, like to really, because that's like, for a lot of us, that's like our purest moments within yoga is because we've actually taken the time to set aside from daily life and really go deep. And when you're in a place like that,
I did it accidentally, Ryan. I had no intention of doing that. It was like,
okay.
It was like an accidental epiphany. It was devastating.
Right.
I mean, I was, you're stripped of all communication. There's no Wi-Fi. There's no cell phones. There's no internet. There's no TV. There's no magazines. There's no nothing.
Wow.
I was at an ashram. We got 2 meals a day. It was a really intense experience. And when I came in, it was difficult to integrate back into my old life. It was not what I had planned.
Sure.
But I wouldn't change a thing. Obviously, my higher self had other plans for me, and I'm cool with that. But the adjustment was a bitch. Let me just say.
Yes. You're allowed to say that. I'm not going to bleep you
like,
out. It's okay.
I was like, high-powered congressional chica, go, 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 to all of a sudden, like, holy shit, I'm in the biggest, awfulest job ever. Like, So anyway, that's how I got into teaching yoga. And then the strangest part was everybody started asking me to teach them yoga. And I was like, I have a day job. No, I don't want to teach yoga.
Right.
I just went to India. So it just kept coming at me. It was like, I didn't have a choice.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that resonates with me about that, only because I've met so many people that had no intention of becoming a teacher. I had no intention of becoming a teacher.
Yeah.
Strange enough, I actually enrolled in teacher training without ever taking a yoga class. I just
you were one of those.
I
like it. I dig it.
I'm just saying, like, something just told me to do it, and so I did it. So,
yeah.
But anyways, and so many of us like actually come from a corporate background where we were just stressed out, and we might have gotten into yoga for the stress, but then we realized there was something more here. There was so much more here.
Actually, back then there was a big trend. I remember seeing a lot of articles in like DC papers and magazines about lawyers trading in their suits and other high-power corporate people trading in their suits for the yoga mat. That was like a thing, trading your suit for a yoga mat.
Yeah.
It was, so there's definitely something going on. It was a big shift, I think, in consciousness probably, and some of us tapped into it and, changed. Your calling changes.
Well, listen, I love the story.
All right, go on.
I mean, no, but I've known you for a while now, and I didn't even know a lot of this. So it's fantastic to uncover for sure. So let me ask you, when did you first encounter stand-up paddleboarding?
Well, I had, as you listed, I had a lot of different certifications, and, Yoga Alliance requires that you do, 40 hours of training I think it's 3 years now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was 2 or 3 at the time, and I think they changed it at some point. And I was just I was in yoga, doing yoga therapy, like, working with a lot of people that had a lot of serious problems, really big kind of, pardon my English, but some fucked up mental and
you
emotional.
are really you're getting in it today.
I'm
all right. Well, you're allowed to say the F word once and it's still PG-13. So
okay,
let's
cool.
just.
All right. That one's done.
Okay.
But it really wore away on me as a therapist. I had a difficult time separating other people's baggage and leaving it at the studio, apparently.
Yes.
And so I wanted to go do a training. I wanted to do something fun. I was looking at all the stuff that it was available in my area for training. It gets 40 hours, and I didn't want to sit through, advanced pranayama techniques. I didn't want to sit through chakra stuff. Like, I just wasn't feeling it. I needed something fun, something different. And SUP Yoga was just starting to become a thing. And this was like, I think 6 years ago now. And so I just decided I was going to go to Florida and do this training. It was, a 4-day training. Stayed in a hotel. I was like, Mom, watch my kid. I need to go. I need a break.
Right.
And it was kind of like the yoga teachers R&R,
which we need.
Kind of, I relaxed in St. Petersburg, and did SUP Yoga, and it was awesome. Watch the manatees flop around, and cool. It was awesome.
let me just real quick. I actually looked up the Yoga Alliance requirements, and I should know this by heart. But every 3 years, starting from your original initial date of registration,
Yeah.
each RYT and ERYT must complete and log a minimum of 45 hours teaching yoga and 30 hours of yoga-related training that is directly related to one of our educational categories, of which at least 10 training hours must be contact hours. So for those of you out there listening to this, this actually counts as continuing education, and this is a non-contact hours. And I want to interject just really quick that October 15th through the 22nd of this month, 2017, we are doing the Yoga Teacher Personal Practice Challenge as a way for teachers to realign with that daily commitment to yoga. We all know that, teachers, doing our personal practice, and this leads what you were saying, getting that R&R time, going to retreats, really just going deeper ourselves so that we can be more effective as teachers. And we all know, like, it weighs at our heart when we're not doing our daily practice. Some of us, like, I used to beat myself up. I mean, if there was, actual wounds, I would be bleeding and I would have bruises. It would not look good. I used to beat the crap out of myself. So it's really awesome when you're a teacher and you can get away. So you got away for 4 days for this retreat, this RR.
Yeah, it was a training, and I used it as a retreat, just relaxed and enjoyed the weather. I also knew that I was headed to Okinawa, Japan, which is an island in Japan, and I was like, well, this will be perfect, give me something different to do. I'll teach stand-up paddleboard yoga, I had no idea how I was going to do it. Mm-hmm. I had no idea really why I was even, you know what I mean? How sometimes your path just I don't know, I think I was just following breadcrumbs somewhere. I didn't really know where it was taking me. But once I moved to Okinawa, and I saw how beautiful it was there, I was like, oh, this place, we need to be outdoors. Right. Unfortunately, it's really too hot to do it on the beach or in the park. But, if you plunk yourself in the water first, and then hop up on a board, now we're talking.
Okay.
So that's how I ended up doing that SUP training. I really, I wanted something different. I was looking for something. I think a lot of times in yoga, we get so serious about ourselves, about the work that we need to do, and I'm with all of that. I mean, I get it, and I do that as much as possible, but there's also times where you just got to relax and not worry so much about things and not take everything so seriously.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Believe me, there are plenty of days where I cry more, more drips of my mat are tears and not sweat, for sure. I do the work, but there's sometimes when I just want to do something fun, and SUP yoga is like that, because you really can't take yourself too seriously, because you'll probably end up in the water. And then when you do end up in the water, you're like, wow, I was really serious before, but that was funny.
Yeah.
And this is kind of fun.
Yeah.
And it really lightens things up, and people start to have fun. It's a whole new experience.
First time on a stand-up paddleboard, I decided, hey, I'm going to take my dog out there. This would be really great. So we ran around the lake, and my dog is just like holding on for dear life. He's just like, this is just not cool. I don't know why you did this to me. And so we moved back to the shore, and he, like, as soon as he was in jumping distance of the shore, he jumps, and I have, like,
you were toast.
He's probably he's between 80 and 85 pounds. When he did that, he kicked the board back, which made me, fall and roll into the water. Of course, there was about 50 people right there, like, taking in my experience. All I could do was just like, that's my dog. That's my dog. Thanks, bud.
That's awesome.
Yes,
But that's comic relief
it
for all those
is.
50 people that were watching you.
That's true.
That's
But
awesome.
you make a great point that we take yoga too serious sometimes. I mean, I don't want to get too much into this, but I've really just noticed it so much within yoga teachers and studio owners and within myself at one point that we find something that gives us healing. So and often we put yoga on a pedestal, meditation, spirituality on a pedestal, and things like marketing, things like your yoga business, just things of anything like of sales. People like, oh, that's less than, that's not as good, and I don't want that to touch my yoga because that's pure.
Right.
Well, words and concepts and all these things don't have any power. It's the only power that we give to it. And so, as a yoga marketing coach, I get a lot of upset emails from people about, oh, you're not honoring the path of yoga. And you know what? I don't get upset because there's probably a part of me when I first became a teacher that would have done the same thing. I was
Yeah.
suffering greatly in life. And so I put yoga on a very high pedestal. So I get it.
Yeah.
But you're right. You're absolutely right. Have fun with it. Don't take it too serious or you're going to end up in the water.
Right. Right. And then when you do end up in the water, just laugh about it, and get back up. It's life.
Sure.
And let me tell you something interesting about stand-up paddleboarding. You'll find that stand-up paddleboarding is a business. And so if you start like a stand-up paddleboard business or just want to focus on yoga, good luck. Because you need to be more multifaceted. You need to be able to offer just plain stand-up paddleboard lessons, stand-up paddleboard tours, and things like that. Because yoga is very specific, and it's not actually that easy to get a consistent following. What I found was more people, because it's a little bit more expensive than a regular yoga class,
Sure.
And it's more of like your novelty yoga.
That's a great question. How much did you charge for yoga classes, stand-up paddleboarding?
Not enough. Not enough.
Well, what did you charge?
Now keep in mind, this is not a U.S. price. Okay.
Okay.
I was in Japan.
Okay.
And I was working with the military community primarily.
Okay.
Military community is used to having things that are free and discounted.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Right. And I was a contractor, and everything that I was offering was you had to pay for it. Okay. So they didn't have like money in the budget to hire a stand-up paddleboard yoga teacher. And if they did, the pay would have been even worse. Promise you. Because I am a contractor and on that side of the business too for another program. But
I'm dying with anticipation. What did you charge?
$25.
And you think that was too little?
Yeah.
Okay. What would you have charged?
In the States, I think depending on the economy. I mean, what's the going rate for a yoga class where you are? Average.
Of course, it depends on the
drop-in.
A drop-in is typically $15 to $20.
Okay. Then I guess I would charge, 25 to 30.
Well, when you rent a stand-up paddleboard, it's usually $40 for an hour.
Thank you.
So,
so there's that. I'm giving them the board too. That's including the rental.
Sure. Well, we kind of jumped way, way ahead. As you really kind of opened the book up. I mean, I'm glad you did because, we needed to transition to that. But so you did this retreat. You were obviously getting to a point where, you were like, I like this. So what was it that prompted you to start a stand-up paddleboarding yoga business?
Okay. I was running 200-hour teacher trainings in Okinawa.
Okay.
And It was difficult for me to advertise my programs there because you had the military community is transitional, and so they really use Facebook a lot because they're overseas, and Facebook is kind of like the social media mode of communication for them. They create these spouses groups, they create all sorts of groups to do things. And I was contracted through the Air Force, and I was working out of their fitness center. And so part of my contract was to allow marketing to do the advertising for me. And let me just tell you that military marketing sucked.
Okay.
It was terrible.
Okay.
It was terrible.
Well, it's probably not going to affect a lot of our, viewers, but.
Right. So for me, I wanted to do something in the summer that was going to put me out there so that people would recognize me and sign up for my teacher training.
Okay.
And nobody in the entire island of Okinawa was offering organized stand-up paddleboard yoga classes yet. So I was, and then word of mouth spread. And summer for yoga teachers, this is typically an off season.
Mm-hmm.
People, their kids are out of school,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
And the whole schedule changes, and the yoga studios are like ghost towns.
Yeah, and it's worse, obviously, in areas that have really hard winters.
Yeah, because people want to be outside. They
Absolutely.
want to enjoy the weather.
You
can't fault that. That's real.
Sure. I mean, I work with a lot of teachers that are in Canada. I work with a lot of teachers. There's some really colder areas. Well, I mean, just even, Denmark, Sweden, Switzerland. And so they have 2 months where basically it just shuts down. Like a lot of yoga studios just shut down. It's
basically yoga studio off season.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And what do studios do if you've got no money coming in? Either you've planned and budgeted for it and you're using that time to regroup for your next year, which is a smart thing to do.
Sure. I don't think 75% or more teachers do that, or studio owners do that.
I had to.
Sure.
I was forced to do that. I had to plan out years in advance for contracting purposes. So having something to do in the off season became important to me, and I enjoyed it as well. It was great, and I really wanted to offer something different. I mean, I enjoyed it so much. The water there is just unbelievably beautiful, and it's warm.
Nice.
It's just it's just amazing. And the location that I had amazing sunsets. So it was really nice for sunset yoga.
So, okay. So let's kind of get the details of this. You created this business and you were doing it basically year round or just seasonal?
Seasonal.
Okay.
It's a side gig.
And we've talked about this actually, that you had created your own boards specifically for stand-up paddleboard yoga, and you found a manufacturer and you had them produced, mass produced.
I did.
I mean, it's very, very, I love it. It's very ambitious. It's, seeing where you can maximize,
Right. The first year I taught the classes there, or actually the first 2 or 3, I think, I was just borrowing boards from the marina, and they were crummy boards. They were not suitable for SUP yoga at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so the students had a terrible experience, some of them. It just wasn't good for my clients. And it was hard to build a solid reputation when people come out and they're wiping out the whole time because the equipment stinks.
Well, let me ask you.
So equipment's important so that your students have a good experience.
Of
There's
course.
a lot of boards out there that claim to be yoga boards, and I'm sure people buy a whole bunch of them because you can't try them out. You don't walk into a sporting goods store and say, "Hey, can I try out your stand-up paddleboard?" You buy them, and $1,000 later.
Well, let's
have fun.
so what would you recommend for to do for stand-up paddleboard yoga? What kind of board?
Well, there's a bunch of boards out there, but I would definitely.
Well, not so much the names, but I mean, you could mention names, but like what criteria, what components of the board?
Okay, I'll tell you the most ridiculously obvious criteria for a yoga stand-up paddleboard. Is the deck pad should be long enough for downward facing dog without the bungee cords getting in the way. Okay, it seems obvious, but most of the paddle boards out there, the deck pad stops just in front of the handle.
Yeah, I never understood that.
Right. Well, it's because that's where you stand. It doesn't need to be anywhere else, and they're saving money because that EVA costs money.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but I mean, I just feel like there are times when you utilize more than that on the board.
Only if you have a dog or you're doing yoga.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Seriously.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, right? The deck pad has to be long enough to accommodate downward facing dog. And for someone that's 6 feet tall, not just someone who's 5 feet tall.
Right.
Well, I can make it work on, a surfboard if I had to. Also, it helps if the deck pad is made of croc skin and not the diamond check. Okay.
Tell me the difference.
I've seen, the diamond check is, cut out diamonds on the board. It's nice and grippy for your feet, so you're not going to slip when you're standing up. But it really stinks when you're on your knees doing yoga poses, and doesn't feel good on the palms of your hands. You start to get marks in your hands and your knees, and it just doesn't feel good. It can be painful even, or because some people aren't very good at stand-up paddling, and so they'll paddle out on their knees.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. So the check, what am I saying? The diamond check is not good. And there's a lot of yoga boards out there with a diamond check, and I'm like, liars.
Well, then, so give us your top 3 recommendations.
Okay,
for
top
boards.
3 recommendations. Croc skin deck pad that's long enough that covers almost the entire board, or the entire board. It should be at least 32 inches wide. Okay. Length, not so important, but around 10 feet for minimum, I would say. The length of the board helps to stabilize the board for taller riders. But if it's too long, then it's not that easy to maneuver. But if you're out there and your primary use on the board is yoga, you'd probably want to go with something that's somewhere between 10 and 11 feet.
Okay.
Now, the basic racing length of a board is 12.5.
Okay.
And they're shaped differently. They're pointed.
Yeah, and you recommend a blow-up board versus an actual
hardboard.
Hardboard, yeah.
Well, it depends, honestly, but I like the blow-up board because they're pretty much indestructible. Your students carrying them out to the water. If you got a hardboard and your beach has rocks, and they set it down, which they always do.
Yeah.
And noobs don't know how to handle a board, and they'll put it the bottom side down, which is that hard surface. And if rock even punctures the urethane surface, and there's even a slight crack, then water seeps into your board. Then if you've got water in your board, now you're waterlogged and you can't ever, that buoyancy of the board, you never get it back. You can patch it, but it's never going to be the same.
Sure. Well,
and the hardboards are hard to store.
I mean, it's definitely cumbersome. There is a little bit of cumbersome actually with putting deflating the board and putting it back in the bag.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at the same time, you don't have to get a roof rack for it. It typically fits in a large duffel bag that you can put in any car.
You can plop it down on the beach.
Yeah, sure.
Nothing's going to happen. And your dog can jump on it and scratch his nails all over, and nothing's going to happen.
Well, so let's kind of like review what we talked about because I think we've gone a little all over, but it's been good. So in regards to the stand-up paddleboard, if people were thinking that they could do it all year round, you're saying probably not. I mean, what about like places like Florida and stuff like that? Could somebody have a year-round SUP business?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. But you have to know your weather. And there's always going to be a couple of months out of the year that are windy.
Sure.
It doesn't matter where you live. Those high windy conditions are not conducive for stand-up paddleboarding.
Yeah, and the
Okinawa, it was
hurricane
like,
season that just came through. I mean, you would be done for like at least probably 2 months. I would guess while
yeah.
things were getting.
Well, yeah. So there's that. The weather's a big factor, and it's mostly wind. That's what I found to be like the biggest influence. Um, I recommend anything over 12 miles an hour, no go.
Okay, good tip.
Yeah. It's just not safe for beginner paddlers. They can get blown, they might not be able to paddle against the wind. Also, it creates chop on the surface of the water, and it's not really that much fun to try yoga on a choppy surface. The water needs to be fairly flat and smooth.
Yeah.
Even on big lakes, you're going to get chop if it's windy.
So it's mostly a seasonal business. Depending upon where you're at in the world, of course, and what the weather's like. So even if you are in a place like Florida, where it's just great weather all year round, even the wintertime, you still have to be cognizant of weather conditions. And I didn't know that, 12 miles an hour is not much.
No,
It's not.
it's not.
So, I mean, it seems like a lot of times it could be very,
It's
and
iffy.
that would be disappointing I think, for a lot of people. Very
Huge.
rarely do you show up for a yoga studio class and they've had to, they can't do it because of some condition
Right.
inside the studio. When people show up for stand-up paddleboarding, and the class is canceled just because there's like, I can see people getting really upset.
No kidding. So I had to use an appointment software that had text messaging function.
Nice.
Yep, because if you've got boards, obviously there's only a certain amount of people you can accommodate. So it's a reservation only type of a thing. I had a 24-hour cancellation policy, which is normal. But part of the sign up, when you sign up, it was on the website. It was also in the confirmation email after they registered for the class that they should check our Facebook page and make sure to check your phone for text messages on cancellation.
That's smart.
And yeah, and so we would leave it up to 1 hour before class before we canceled. Sometimes we canceled 1 hour before class was supposed to start. And weather changes.
Sure.
I would get out there and it's like glass and it's gorgeous, and I get the line all set up because I hook everyone in, I tether them all in because it's on the ocean.
Yeah.
You don't want them floating out to China. And I'd get there, I'd get the line all set up, everything looked fantastic. And literally like an hour before class, like the sky would just open up and there'd be like thunderclouds. And I'm like, really? So I would, quick get to my phone, go into the app, hit the cancel button and be like, totally devastated, and shoot it all out and cancel it. And, and then go and wrap up the line and pack everything up. And of course, 10 minutes before class is supposed to start, the sky would open up and the sun would come out and be like, ugh. But, it's just the way it goes. And so you just have to make sure that your clients are aware of the fact that how it goes. So their expectations are met.
That's excellent because nobody wants to have an unhappy customer, and
yeah,
that's somebody that could leave a bad review for you, like on Facebook, on Google, on Yelp.
Actually not canceled class, right? The wind was like 13 miles an hour, and I was like, oh, there's just a little bit of chop. We'll just do it anyway. And people show up and they're like, yeah, let's just do it. It'll be fun. And I end up with someone who's got to paddle back to shore because they're ready to throw up.
Jeez.
They get seasick.
Jeez.
And I'm like kicking myself, should have canceled class.
So that brings up a good point. Like, what were some mistakes that you made creating the business and that you can speak of that are kind of like big mistakes?
Let's see. I would say the biggest one was not getting the reservation, software with text messaging capability right away.
Okay.
I was like, well, I only have I'm small. There's only a few people interested. They're like friends, and was all wishy-washy about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it made more work for me in the end. And then I had, I was trying to set up like a group text on like these group texting apps, and sometimes they wouldn't go through, or just weird things were happening.
Yeah.
Just suck up the fee and just do it right away. Because you're going to grow. The business will grow because people are going to have a good experience. It's fun. They're going to bring a friend next time, or two friends, because people always they don't want to do stand-up paddleboard yoga alone, because it's a mystery. It's the novelty yoga stuff. It's like aerial yoga, or like a beer yoga. It's like it's novelty, right? And you're going to bring a friend.
Why did you have to bring up beer yoga? Why?
Well, because it's
I'm not even going to comment on it. I mean, listen, if that's your thing, great.
I was going to say goat yoga, but
that's actually, I love that. I would do that in a heartbeat. Those things, because it's like, I mean, I love animals. I mean, I often love animals more than people. I mean, my girlfriend, she has 2 cats and she has 2 dogs. I have a dog. We're like one big family, but with the animals, walking around you and, rubbing up against you and sitting on your mat and stuff like that.
I'm way too type A for that.
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh,
I could see that being a problem.
That thing just put a poof on my mat. Who's got a mat wipe? I can't do it. Can't do it anymore.
Well, there's one place that I saw a viral video for goat yoga, and the person had it at their farm, and they had like a 600 person wait list.
Oh my gosh.
That's crazy. So there's something there, and that's
clearly. But
again,
it's a one-time thing. That's the thing. People are not with these novelty yogas. They're not going to buy an unlimited monthly pass. It's like it's a seasonal thing in most places. Okay, I'm just speaking for most places.
Yeah.
And if it is if something comes up in the summer, something else comes up, they want to take their kids to Disneyland, or they're going to take their family camping, or those kind of things always trump SUP yoga. And so, the best thing I found was to sell small packages.
Well, here's another thing that I'll let you comment more on that in a second. I just wanted to interject that a person I worked with that went through the Yoga Mastermind program, Leah, she actually, first of all, she's a really cool, very driven woman. Had a very successful yoga studio in Israel. Moved to the United States, I want to say near Atlanta, Georgia, and she actually she liked stand-up paddleboarding, and so she would do these SUP weekend retreats, and I think she was charging $250, something like that.
Yep.
And women loved it.
Yes.
I mean, people loved it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's
yes. So before you get too far into that, I'll tell you what I've discovered, and it's just like a yoga studio, right? You're not going to make your money on the classes. You're going to make the bulk of your money, and as a yoga teacher, this. You're going to make the bulk of your money on retreats, trainings,
workshops,
events.
Yeah,
workshop, event type things.
Absolutely.
That's where you're going to make the money. And so I found that it was since the season was short, even in Okinawa, it was only like 5 months long, 4 months long, because it gets windy. I would plan out the season, plan out the events. And if weather didn't cooperate, it got canceled. You know, big deal. That's life. But I had something that I was going to do. I had, you know, this plan or that plan. Another thing that I found that makes pretty decent money is to rent your boards to other yoga teachers that want to do a retreat. Right?
That's smart.
Yeah. I rented 10 boards, right? For one weekend, $500.
Oh, wow.
All I had to do was pack up the boards and help her load them up.
Wow.
Right?
Wow. Well,
think about it.
So no, that's a pearl right there. That's an absolute pearl.
No kidding.
That actually just somebody could make great passive income just actually doing that.
Totally.
You know, renting out their boards.
But you have to get the word out that you have this thing that people can, you know, so you got to market that too to yoga teachers.
Well, listen, I want to kind of foreshadow something, you know, me and Rebecca have been talking about creating, you know, a program like how to run a successful SUP business. And so we're going to continue to collaborate on that. If you're interested, you know, please obviously, you know, email me about it. But you've really given a lot of great information in terms of, you know, I mean, this is really like, there's so many things that can go wrong in the SUP yoga world. Because there's so many things beyond your control, especially like the weather, obviously being number one. There's also a lot of upfront cost, you know, with the boards,
huge and investment.
Right. And, you know, again, you're one of the smartest yoga teachers that I've ever met in terms of business wise, because just some of the tools you put together, that, you know, if you were to show yoga teachers, you know, that are starting a business like this or want to add this to their, I'd say repertoire, but to their resume, but the services, the offerings that they have, you really have a lot of that cut through the chase advice that can save people so much time, so much, you know, money. Like,
I made the mistakes. I figured them out.
Yeah.
I figured them out.
And
I was able to turn a profit the very first year that I bought my own equipment.
That's great.
Amazing.
That's fantastic.
It was amazing.
That's fantastic. That's one of the things that I mentioned in the introduction. I appreciate about you so much is that you've literally had to move to like 6 different cities and start all over again. You know, no network, no like students, you know, in those locations. You had to start all over, and you were successful in each one of those. And I think that's seriously, that's being a military spouse is difficult enough, but when you've got to pick up and actually like, you know, leave your business and leave your students, that's got to be incredibly difficult.
It was. Students cry when you leave, you know, they get upset, they get attached. Sure. It's like right?
Yeah.
Imagine if your yoga teacher was like, "Oh, I'm moving. See you later." You'd be like, "Oh."
Oh, if my teacher left, you know, like Colorado,
devastating.
I would be very sad. Like I actually, at least once a month or once every 2 months, I take my teacher out to lunch just to reconnect and stuff. So yeah, absolutely. I'm looking over kind of the questions that I had, you know, posed to ask you. We went a little all over, but I guess, you know, to end this training, what I would like to ask you is what advice would you give someone who is thinking about, you know, thinking about getting into SUP yoga, like adding that as an offering?
I would say, and I'm going to say this kind of like, what are my 2 biggest peeves, you know?
And let me actually reference that they don't want to have a whole business, but they want to just like offer that kind of like a side offering.
Okay. One, I would make sure that you actually know how to stand up paddleboard. Seems kind of obvious,
No,
but it's not.
you're right. Sure.
I've seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
It's a disaster. Um, Make sure that you know the ins and outs of water safety and water rescue. Um, it's serious. I mean, if you're in the water, this is not a studio where someone might tip over on their mat. This is like the real deal. You're going to have to jump in and drag their ass back up on the board.
Yeah.
Like we're talking
Baywatch.
Yeah, we're talking water rescue.
Well, yeah.
So that's a big deal. That's kind of a peeve of mine. Like, please make sure that you're safe and you understand all of the water safety regulations in your area, the
Sure.
Coast Guard regulations.
Sure.
Make sure that you're safe when you are out there teaching and that someone knows that you're going to be there. Make sure that your students can swim. People sign up for these classes and they can't swim.
Wow.
And they're like, well, I thought I was going to wear a life jacket. And you're like, yeah, you can't really do yoga wearing a life jacket.
Yeah. I was just thinking, all the forward bends makes it really almost impossible.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
I've actually had people come to my class wearing a life jacket.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
And that's why I'm telling you this, because I've made these mistakes.
Well, the thing is
I didn't write on my website, participants must be able to swim. I assumed.
Yeah.
That.
Well, you got to take the monkey off your back. You got to, for liability reasons, obviously, you state these things ahead of time. Listen, I came into this talk thinking more about the business aspect of it, but there is so much more in terms of the actual safety of it. And I really
that's a whole thing in itself.
For sure.
And what was the question? What's the second biggest?
Well, no, I mean, I'm saying that.
What are the two biggest things that you need to do to start to do just SUP yoga classes, right?
Well, there's that someone who just wants to make that an offering. Maybe they don't even want to purchase their own boards. Maybe they want to rent boards. But from what you're saying, that's actually incredibly expensive to have to do.
No.
Okay.
No, because you might be able to find a marina or a hotel or a campground or some place that has a dozen rental boards. I discovered that my magic number for students in a class was 10.
Okay.
Anything over 10 was like herding cats, because now you've got people that are floating and you're trying to get them hooked into the line. And nobody shows up early. You tell them arrive 15 minutes early and
they show up right.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. So my magic number was 10 students. So I would say, make sure you understand the water safety aspect. And along with that, make sure that you actually practice your yoga on the paddleboard before you take it on the water and teach it to somebody. It seems like a no-brainer, but people are like, well, I can teach this on the mat, so we'll just go out there and teach it on a board. It is not the same. I can verify that it is not the same.
No, I just picture a teacher just like, okay, we're going to stay in downward dog for about 10 minutes now.
And now they're like, how the F do you get into warrior pose from here, And so now you got people on all fours, and some people are looking around and they're like going to tip over, and you've got a teacher that's not used to using verbal skills. They're used to demonstrating the whole class on their mat. And then they're not paying attention to their students, and someone's hat's floating away, and this person fell off and they came unclipped from the line. And so they've got to jump in and go clip them back on the line, but you got to still keep teaching your class.
Right.
So there's like a whole host of disasters that can happen.
All right. So last part, and we've got about 2 minutes left. So how about people who actually want to just move forward and they want to open up a SUP business? Like they just know they want to do it. what would be some advice that you would give them? Like the top three?
To get their own boards and start their own business?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the next level. I would say do your research on what board you want to buy.
Mm-hmm.
Buy them in bulk. See if you can find a wholesaler. Figure out the logistics of storage. Buy hard boards because they tend to be a little bit more durable in the long run. They'll last longer than inflatable. But at the same time, like if you don't have storage and you're got a rocky beach somewhere, then I know a lot of people that have wasted money on the hard boards because they get pretty dinged up real early.
Yeah.
And they just like lost a lot of money because of that. So the inflatables are great because they're durable, and you can get them for a fairly cheap price. They're a little bit cheaper than hard boards.
Okay.
So do your research on the board. Make sure it's stable enough for yoga. Make sure it's got all the right areas to clip the board at the nose and the tail. Make sure it's got somewhere to store your paddle while you can keep your students leashed to the board.
Sure.
Because that leash is the safety net. I know some people that, the training I took, they told us to leash our paddle to the board. Well, now we're not leashed to the board. Now you've increased your safety issue.
Okay.
I don't recommend that. I'd rather my students be tethered to the board because if I've got to pull them out, I'd rather be able to pull the line around their ankle.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've had to rescue people before. Many. It seems like, I'll never have to do it. Yeah, right.
Okay, number one, research the boards. Yeah. Number two.
Research the boards. Number two, financially plan your season. If you don't, you're going to be very disappointed at the end. When I say financially plan your season, I mean map out what months are good for SUP Yoga, okay? Mm-hmm. And then how much money did you invest on your equipment, okay? How much money do you need to make each month to make that money back and make a profit? Okay?
You have showed me your the tool that you actually made that takes all of this into account.
I'm a bit of a spreadsheet nerd because of
it's honestly it's one of the most customized, like on point, like tools that I've seen for teachers to really, even beyond stand-up paddleboarding, to just keep track of.
Yoga studios could use it too, for sure. Yeah. But you set up your target that you need to make, and then it's kind of like this wow moment where you're like, oh boy, I really need to do workshop or events this weekend and that weekend, and I really need to boost some ways to make revenue, or else I'm going to be at a loss, And sure. I think a lot of people, especially yoga teachers, because we don't go to school for finance.
No,
we go to school for chakras and meditation and finding our center and all that stuff. And so numbers are intimidating.
Sure.
But I find out, for me, once you've got the numbers ironed out, it really takes off a lot of the stress.
Sure. No, but it also, like, there's these things that we don't look at. And so it becomes a fear. It becomes something in the back of our minds versus like, okay, this is what I know my numbers are. This is what I know I have to make and move forward. Right. Because it's almost like just, again, a fear we don't want to address. We just don't really want to look at it. It's not something, and then it just kind of like becomes takes up a part of our consciousness. So it's nice to just get that all out. Okay, so plan your season out. Number 3.
Yes. Number 3.
My Alexa just, I shouldn't have said her name. No. She started talking to me.
The third most important thing.
Yes.
I guess, know your equipment, get the right equipment, financially plan. And number 3 is stuff that you're teaching, marketing. You got to market the heck out of your stuff.
Sure.
especially if it's a short season, you know.
So learn
Um,
marketing, which
yeah,
is
you really do. I did things like, bring a friend specials, um, you know, stuff like that to kind of get the word out. Um, don't hesitate to do partnering events with other companies. I don't know, anything you can dream of, really. Um, yeah, I know people are doing like, little adventures where you go to a restaurant somewhere. Maybe you do your SUP yoga class first, and then you paddle over somewhere and eat,
yeah,
at a restaurant, or
yeah, like cross promotions. That's really smart.
yeah, stuff like that. Really kind of dive into the events. I think like the biggest disappointment would be to rely on income from just the classes themselves. As any yoga studio would know, right? You don't just rely on the classes and your repeat customers. You have to rely on those big ticket items, work on your workshop promotions, your
Sure.
events, your trainings of sorts. It's like that, but just for stand-up paddleboarding.
No, that's extremely helpful. That's really, really, really helpful for, I'm sure, for people who are considering, the investment, the return on your investment,
Yes.
what's really involved in it, the time and the requirements, dealing with weather, dealing with safety. I mean, really, Rebecca, thank you. You've really covered so much. Um, Let me ask you this, like, because I don't know if we've talked about, like, eventually promoting this, but do you want me to mention the book?
Sure. Why not? I saw the look on your face and I was like, uh-oh, something's coming.
No, no, no. So I mean, like, you're a trailblazer, Rebecca. Like, you have gone into uncharted territory, uncharted waters, and you've
Literally.
really, you've created a business and you did it yourself. You didn't have anything to really bounce off of or anyone to talk to regarding this. Um, so you have started to, and you're almost finished with creating a stand-up paddleboard yoga teacher training manual, because there's really
Yes.
not one out there right now.
Not yet. There are books about stand-up paddleboard yoga, but none that I've found that are really comprehensive and get down to the nitty-gritty details. Like something that just came to the top of my head, one of the nitty-gritty details of tethering people to a line,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
When the people that trained me, and they have a huge network, and they're very well known, but they didn't. I was like, okay, I'm here and I don't know how to keep everyone's boards together. Like everyone's blowing apart. Like I don't know what to do. And
right.
they're like, well, you can anchor. And I'm like, well, it's like 60 feet deep. I can't
Oh
anchor.
my gosh.
Right, right. And they're like, nobody had an answer. So, and then long story short, I've got details in the book on like literally how to make a line, how far apart to tie the knots, and what to use to make your clips. What to look for specifically on your stand-up paddleboard, on your yoga board.
Hmm.
Things that you need, like because you have to have a clip, to tie your people into the board, right?
Hmm.
And I made mistakes. I made so many mistakes. I
Well,
bought the wrong boards the first time through, so I made my own.
yeah, well, which is awesome, but at the same time, I mean, we're all going to make mistakes in business, and that's the thing, is that we to not take it so personal, because the
Right.
thing is that, like, a lot of us collapse on our failures. We just
Yes.
make it so personal, as opposed to, okay, it wasn't the right decision. What can we shift to? What changes can we make to make this right? And
Yes.
that's where a
So
lot of
I
us.
basically have like four years of mistakes that I've put into this book, things that I've learned.
Well,
It was 4 seasons of like trial and error, things that worked and things that didn't work.
that's yeah, 4 seasons is quite a lengthy time to learn, obviously a lot
A
about
lot of
the
stuff.
business and how to get up and running. Listen, We have to finish this. This is a little bit longer call than usual,
Sorry.
but no, it's great. It's for those who've listened to the end, I hope you really got a lot of uh, just pearls of wisdom. And if you've been thinking about this, then now you really know what you're up against. You know what to expect. You know how to maximize the potential of it. I'm going to leave
All
it.
the things I'm putting in the book are, I wish I would have had that. I really wish I would have had that before I started.
Well, everybody should just stay tuned. If they're interested in stand-up paddleboarding yoga and offering that, definitely stay tuned. Me and Rebecca will probably be offering something shortly. But thank you again, Rebecca, so much for your time.
My pleasure,
Really,
Ryan.
you imparted a lot of wisdom, and I just really, really appreciate those 4 seasons of headaches and for you to shine through and give us, really the play-by-play on a successful, approach with stand-up paddleboarding. So thank you again for your time.
All right. Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Yeah, so we will end there. Thanks again, everyone, for participating in another awesome live off the mat. All right, everybody, take care.